Good morning, everyone. The first topic which we are going to discuss today is called champagne. Now, what is champagne? That's the first question. Now, champagne is a sparkling wine which is produced by in bottle secondary fermentation. Now, what does that mean? In bottle secondary fermentation. So, you've already studied that a wine is made by the formula yeast eats sugar and produces alcohol and carbon dioxide. So, you know this already. Now, that is your first fermentation. So, the second fermentation means we have to do fermentation again for the product, but we do it inside the bottle. That means we add some extra yeast, some extra sugar inside a bottle of wine which has already been filled. So, that's called in bottle secondary fermentation. So, what happens is this second fermentation produces more alcohol and more carbon dioxide. But now, because the carbon dioxide is inside the bottle and the bottle is sealed, these bubbles stay in the bottle and make your wine sparkling. So, champagne is also called a sparkling wine. Now, to be called a champagne, it has to be made in the Champagne region of France. It cannot be made anywhere else in the world. So if you're making a sparkling wine from different parts of the world, they are called sparkling wines, but not champagnes. So that's Champagne. It's on the northern part of France towards Alsace, towards Germany. So it's quite cold in the town called Epernay. And because of this, it's more suitable to produce white wines rather than red wines in Champagne. And now, very important, there are only three grape varieties which are used for making champagne. And those three are Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, and Chardonnay. Now, if you see them, Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier are both black grapes, and Chardonnay is the only white grape. That means champagne can also be called a Blanc de Noir, which means a white wine made from black grapes. Now, also remember, champagne is white because they do not use the skin of these black grapes. They only use the pulp and the juice. Okay, and now champagne comes in various styles, various levels of taste. Now, everybody wants to have a different sweetness level in their product. So we have things like extra brut. Brut in French means dry. Dry means uh, not having any sugar, residual sugar inside. So extra brut is really dry on your palate. When you try and drink it, you will not feel any sweetness in your mouth. Followed by brut, which is still considered dry, 1.2% residual sugar. Now this is still very dry for most of the people. Now you come to extra sec, which is slightly sweetened. You can actually feel the sugar in your mouth. The next category is sec, which is quite sweet, moderately sweet. Then you have demi sec, and then you have something called doux, which is really, really sweet. These wines usually go after dinner as accompaniment to your dessert, or you can just have it on its own as a dessert. Now, your champagnes or sparkling wines can come in various sizes. So you see, like a regular wine, you can pour a little, but the rest you can keep it in your bar and serve it to another person by glass. But you cannot do that for a sparkling wine. And why is that? Because of the gas. After you open a wine, just like your Coca-Cola bottles, the product will start losing its carbonation. So to protect that, let's say you have a restaurant where you have maybe only couples coming and visiting. Obviously, a couple it'll be harder for a couple to finish a full bottle of wine, which is 750 milliliters. So for such restaurants, maybe you would like to invest on half bottles, which are half the size, or quarter bottles, which are only for one person. Quarter bottles are also used if you are using them in airlines for one customer. It's just maybe one and a half glass of wine, sparkling wine. Or quarter bottles can also be used for room service. If you have business travelers who want to have a sparkling wine for dinner in his room. Alternatively, you also have bigger bottles called Magnum, Jeroboam, Rehoboam, which are much bigger in size. You can see it on the slide. You have 2 times, 4 times, 6 times, or even 20 times the size of a regular bottle. So they will look something like this. Okay, now reading a champagne label. Now, if you look at this label on the slide, champagne shows a few things. Nowhere on the slide it is written, nowhere on this label it's written that it's a sparkling wine. That means whenever you see the word champagne written on top, you already know that it is a wine with gas or it is a sparkling wine. You also know that it is made in the Champagne region of France and nowhere else. For example, if I am a farmer and I make the wine in Bordeaux or Burgundy or Loire, if I make exactly the same three grape varieties, but I make it in a different town, I cannot call it a champagne. It will be a sparkling wine from France. You will also see brut written on the side. That means this label, this wine is dry. You will see the alcohol content in the bottom, the country of origin. You will see the name of the brand, which is worth clicking. This is a very famous brand. Uh, and you will also see something called appellation. We will discuss appellation in our theory class later on. Appellation basically means the wine category. What category of wine is it? Is it top class, a medium quality, or a slightly lower quality wine? Just to let you know, all champagnes are the highest quality sparkling wines coming from France. Now, manufacturing a wine, these are the steps. I'll go through all these steps one by one. And after watching this video, you can also see these three links and you can click them in succession, one after another, and see a video on champagne production. These are from YouTube. So the first step which you do for champagne is harvesting, which happens after summers are over, just before the winters start coming in. So you hand pick the grapes or you machine pick the grapes as required. And the second step you do is you press the grapes, you press the juice, and this has to be done as soon as possible. You do not wait for too long because, see, there's yeast on top of the grapes, like we discussed earlier. And this yeast would be lost if there's a lot of handling by our hands. Our hands would actually remove the yeast on which is naturally occurring on top of these grapes. The third step is fermentation. So you'll have Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, and Chardonnay, all three grapes. They will be fermented separately in separate tanks to convert the grape must into wine. Now, the next step is really important for a wine. After you have Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, and Chardonnay wine, now you have to get them blended together to become one flavor. And this is where we have somebody called master blenders. Now, these ladies and gentlemen get a lot of money for their palate. Palate means for their taste buds. They have to blend a Pinot Noir, a Pinot Meunier, and a Chardonnay together in a ratio that is acceptable for a lot of people to enjoy. Now, what that means is if a blender comes up with a fantastic blend, there will be a lot of consumers buying the product. But alternatively, if the blender does not come up with a blend which he thinks will sell, uh, the producer will lose a lot of money because people don't enjoy it. Therefore, a blender is a really master blender is a really important position in wine. Going ahead, now after the wine has been blended, they are put in a bottle. Now they have to do the secondary fermentation. Now, this secondary fermentation means we have to add a little bit of yeast and a little bit of sugar again inside that bottle so that the yeast can eat the sugar and produce alcohol and carbon dioxide. Now, this is called dosage de tirage, or it's also called liqueur de tirage. The liquid is called liqueur de tirage. After that, the wines are bottled and they are rested lying down position or horizontally, or in French they also call it mise sur latte position. Now, what happens is, when the wines are lying down in the cellar, now these wines are slowly getting a secondary fermentation. And as the yeast eats the sugar and it produces alcohol and gas, the wines will build up a lot of pressure. That also means these bottles are much more stronger than a regular wine bottle because they have to sustain that pressure. Now, after this is done, see, after the yeast has eaten all the sugar, what happens is it has nothing more to eat. So the yeast will die. And then that dead yeast forms, it makes the wine cloudy. So we have to clean it off. So to clean that dead yeast, we do a process called remuage. In remuage, we have these bottles. They are put in a wooden rack, which is called a pupitre, and these bottles are turned on a regular basis and slightly pushed up. So after a few weeks, the gentleman comes again, turns them again, pushes them up again. So turn, push up. So he'll do this over a period of weeks or months, and after a few months or maybe nearly a year, now these bottles are standing straight up. All that dead yeast which was there has rolled down and has come to the neck of the bottle. And now we have to remove that dead yeast. So what they have to do is they do a process called disgorgement. Now how we do this? See, if you open a bottle of wine which has gas and liquid, if you open it upside down, everything's going to drop. If you make it straight again, everything gets mixed up again. All that cloudy yeast which you slowly brought it to the neck of the bottle gets mixed up again. So that's a problem. So what they do is they'll take this bottle and then they'll freeze the bottle, they'll freeze the neck of the bottle. So what happens is, imagine the neck of the bottle gets so cold that it turns into an ice cube. So you have an ice cube or a little bit of wine which has all the dead yeast inside, and the rest of the wine on top is nice and cold but clean. So what these gentlemen do, they will slowly turn the bottle up. Now the liquid will fall down, but the ice cube stays on top. They will slowly open the wine, and as soon as they open it, there's a lot of pressure inside the bottle. So this pressure pushes the wine out, and the ice cube with all the dead yeast flies out of the bottle. You can see in this photo, he's doing it by hand. Nowadays, it's all done by machines. But you can see he's doing this by hand, and you can see that frozen dead yeast is flying out of the bottle. So this is called disgorgement or disgorgement. Now we realize when there is disgorgement, there will be a little bit of wine which will also fly out because of the pressure. So they have to top it up because see, no consumer wants a bottle of wine to have different portions. So one bottle is 750 ml, another bottle is 730 ml. Nobody will accept it. So they have to top up the wine to make it exactly at the same level. Plus, they can also top up with a little bit of sugar depending on what kind of wine you want to make. Do you want to make a brut, which is dry, or do you want to make a sec or demi sec or doux, which can become sweet? So depending on what kind of sweetness, they'll add a little bit of sweet juice, grape juice, to give it some sugar. After that, they will cork a wine. Now, a wine cork is very different than the normal cork. Uh, a champagne cork is very different than a regular wine cork. You'll see that this cork has a mushroom kind of shape. Just to realize, this mushroom shape is not how it goes inside. When we put this cork in the bottle, it's exactly like a cylinder, just like a normal wine cork. But then we tie it up with this metal plate, it's called an agrafe. And what happens is there's a lot of pressure which is pushing the uh, cork out. But then we have this agrafe which is holding it in the bottom. So what happens is the cork expands on the side because of the pressure from both sides. And that is what gives it this trademark shape of mushroom shaped or umbrella shaped cork. Then the best way to serve champagne, I'm sure you've seen it in movies, people opening a bottle and just going up. That's not the best way to drink champagne. The best way it should be, first of all, nice and chilled, which is around 4 to 7 degrees centigrade. Now, if you don't remember 4 to 7 degrees, maybe you can imagine the temperature of an ice cold soft drink like a Coca Cola or Pepsi. It's called chilled. So, chilled means around 5 degrees. And usually it should be served in long glasses, which are called tulip glasses or flute glasses. Now these glasses are really nice and long, very thin, and very small opening on the top. That means it's less surface area touching the oxygen, so less bubbles come out. Imagine if you have a very big glass, like a martini glass, a lot of surface area towards the air, so a lot of bubbles will be released, and your champagne would turn into a flat white wine very fast. And you don't want that because the customer is paying for these bubbles. Now, these are a few famous brands for you to note. Uh, they are not the best, but they are the most famous and they are the most award winning brands in the world. And these are brands for champagnes only. But remember, there are lots of sparkling wine brands from France, from Italy, from Germany, Spain, Portugal, or the New World countries like Australia, with Australia, South Africa, America, Chile, which are really good. The ones which I've shown on screen are mostly for champagne, which are very, very famous. So with this, I come to the end of my slide. Please go through the notes and please see the videos which have been uh, put on the screen to give you further information. I'll see you in the next video.